Welcome to AI Driven, a podcast about using AI for business. AI Driven is produced and hosted by Cognistx, an AI company based in Pittsburgh with offices in the US, Latin America, and Asia. Welcome to AI Driven. I'm Patty Maldonado. Today we're discussing generative AI and extractive AI models with Cognistx CEO Sanjay Chopra and data scientist Justin Waltrip. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Patty. It's always good to be with you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're with us again. It's been only a couple of weeks since our last podcast. So basically, the AI hype as of late has been on ChatGPT, which is an example of generative AI. We thought that you both could explain how generative AI works well for business and compare it to extractive AI models, which Cognistx has used to develop one of its core products. So Sanjay, please get us started with telling us a little bit more about what generative AI refers to and what it does.
Absolutely, Patty. So as you've seen, in the last 6, 7 months, with the coming of ChatGPT and Google Bard and Palm and a lot of new large language models, uh, the whole area of generative AI has taken off a lot. What it is these models have been trained over all the information that's available on the World Wide Web or other open sources of data, Wikipedia, so on and so forth. Um, uh, ChatGPT in particular up till 2021, and now obviously there's GPT-4. And what they're really good at is by understanding all the information that they have seen, generating new content or coming up with answers based on what they have seen in the past. So these models are phenomenal when it comes to generating new words, language, and paragraphs. But they have a few shortcomings, however, sort of, one, they hallucinate a little bit, where if they're not sure of something or if they've not come up with, don't know precisely what's going on, or in general, they can sort of, mix concepts up and create content that may not be true. The problem is they do it very plausibly. So it looks like it's genuine content where it could be completely made up. So that's one shortcoming. The other shortcoming we have with generative AI is it's not explainable from that perspective. So it's a black box driven based on complex large models. And what basically happens is it says, hey, here is the answer. Don't ask me why I gave you this answer, but this is the best I got. Use it for what you can.
Okay, so Justin, tell us about extractive AI and how it differs from generative AI.
Yeah, of course. So extractive AI is different from generative AI because it just tries to point you to where the answer to your questions should be found. So if you're asking a question about a document, like what is the title, it's not going to generate that, but it's actually going to point you to the exact position on the page where you can find the title of that document or any other kind of information that you're looking for. And so this is really useful because when you are looking for your answers and you're getting predictions from a model, you actually know where those answers came from. So instead of having ChatGPT synthesize an answer that might come from many different sources and ones that you don't actually know, extractive AI answers your questions using only the documents that you've actually provided to it. So if you only are interested in asking questions about one particular document, it will show you exactly where that answer has come from in that particular document.
That's great. I mean, that's actually extremely, very, very, very clear. So how could you and should you use each of these for business? Like, for example, generative AI, it's, everybody's talking about it. They're talking about ChatGPT and all of the copycats that are out there. But people and businesses don't necessarily know how to use it, why to use it. Can you give us, either one of you, give us some examples of the best way to use generative AI or like a chat GPT?
So we can sort of, I think, Patty, what you need to be thinking about is the following way. Depending upon your use case, you can either use generative AI or use extractive AI and even use a combination of the two. So let's say if your needs are you need a very precise answer, right? Show me what do I need to do to fix this aircraft engine, and what all maintenance has been done on it in the past. You want an exact answer. You want a precise answer from trusted corpus of documents. So extractive is the perfect use case for that. Whereas sort of, where you're coming up with a use case where I generate this new marketing blog for me, and come up with some new concepts for me to do, plan a trip, or go plan a vacation in some exotic island. That's a great sort of way to use for generative AI. You could also do is based on what you have done in terms of extractive AI, extracted some answer, and then say, hey, now create an email based on this and send it to a client to follow up further. So that then you're using the best of both worlds. So it's mostly driven by uh, the business needs and the use cases as to which model would be applicable. Justin, you want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing that I would add is a concrete example of where this actually occurs in real life. So recently, there was a lawyer who used ChatGPT to do past legal discovery to find old court cases that might be relevant to his case. And it actually hallucinated many of those sources, and the judges got very angry with him because he was citing old legal sources that weren't actually there. And so that's a really good example of where generative AI shouldn't be relied upon without actually validating those answers with a tool like extractive AI.
Well said. Patty, back to you.
Well, thanks so much, guys. I mean, that's a really good example. Now, I know that Cognistx has really put to use extractive AI and adapted it to Square, one of your flagship products. If you could tell us a little bit about how Square works and how it uses extractive AI and for what means.
Go ahead, Justin.
So, from a technical perspective, Square is a question answering system. And so it's designed to take your documents, say you have a bunch of internal company documents, or you have a bunch of websites that you want to understand some kind of information about. Maybe you want to know the titles, but maybe you want to know something more complicated, like which parts were used for this repair, whether your legal contract has a specific provision inside of it. There are lots of different pieces of information that you might want to know about these documents. And so what Square does is it uses a combination of extractive and generative AI to understand what information is contained in those documents and answer your questions appropriately. So if you ask a question that needs to just point to the correct answer in the documents, it'll use extractive AI to show you exactly where that answer can be found. It will give you context around that answer, and it can even give you a confidence score that tells you how confident the model is that that is the correct answer. And we can do something similar with generative AI, where you can ask more complicated questions. Maybe a question relies on a yes or a no answer, and that piece of text, yes or no, might not be contained in the document itself. And so that's where we rely on generative AI models to understand whether your answer the answer from the model should be yes or no, and still is able to give you a confidence score.
So what I was wondering is the decision to go with generative AI or extractive AI, a question of either or is it, do you choose one or the other? But I think you're saying you can use them both, and you created a platform that does both.
Yeah, it really depends on even the question. On a question by question basis, you might only want extractive AI, you might only want generative, or you might want a combination of the both. And especially when you're concerned about the sources behind how the AI is actually answering your question, or if you want to know how confident the AI is in its prediction, that's when this combination really shines.
So how does the platform decide for you, or do you decide? I mean, do you go into Square and say, oh, okay, this is generative. This is, it's more like open source as opposed to this is extractive AI. How does it determine, or does the user determine that?
So this kind of relates to the concept of dynamic versus static questions within Square. So when you first upload your documents, you can ask dynamic questions about your documents in a platform that's pretty similar to like Google search, but on only your documents. And so typically those are going to be using extractive technology, where if you, in the same way that Google does, if you type in how can I repair this sink, it's going to try to find you some kind of manual, and it'll point you to the specific text that actually tells you how to accomplish that goal. Whereas static questions is where you can define a preset list of questions that might be more complicated than just where is the answer on the page. And so a good example of that would be, does this legal contract contain a most favored nations provision? That's just a type of legal provision. And the platform actually needs to understand that document first. It needs to know whether that type of language exists in the document, and then it needs to form its answer based on that. So it'll provide a yes if it's actually able to find that, or a no if it isn't. And it can even be more complicated than that. It can actually combine multiple pieces of information using generative AI to give you a much more complicated answer.
We have the flexibility by giving some of the power even back to the user. They can tell us through the user interface, hey, I want you to use extractive models and give a precise answer for this particular question. This case, let's run free and sort of, come up with the best generative answer. So sort of that is possible also, again, giving the power back to the user and letting them choose as to what they want and how they want to see it. Obviously, if linking back to the source document and accuracy is important, they would choose extractive. Otherwise, they could choose generative. So that flexibility also does exist within Square.
So with Square, you've really merged the two different AI models. Now, I know that one of the things that you're working on with Square is creating a public platform that people can use. Tell us when that might be available so people can take this out for a test drive.
So the platform itself is almost ready. We are in the last stages of development in terms of especially that dynamic question capability, where you're able to upload your own documents and ask questions, and that'll be available as a public demo so that you can actually not just hear our claims about how good our AI is, but actually test it out yourself and understand how well our technology performs on your actual documents and how well we can actually find the pieces of information that you care about.
That's really great. So that'll be, I think that's kind of like a month away. Or hopefully sooner, maybe?
Yeah, especially depending on when the podcast comes out.
Hopefully this week. So if someone wanted to learn more about Square and wanted to speak to either you, Justin, or Sanjay, or to get more details on the platform as it exists now, where would they go?
So they could go to our website at cognistx.com and look at our Square page, and that'll detail all of the different features that our Square platform offers, including dynamic and static queries. But you can also email us directly. So my email is justin@cognistx.com, and we can take your documents and we can give you a demonstration of the kinds of information that we can actually extract from those pieces documents.
Yeah. And so, one of the other things I wanted to ask you, and maybe I jumped the gun by just asking you to share where people can get more information, but are there particular industries that this is better for, or is it good for everybody, no matter the business?
So I think it's really flexible because there are a lot of different industries that need to find pieces of information, or at least spend a lot of their time doing Google search type tasks on their own documents. And so even if you are, say you're a programmer and you're trying to look through documentation to find the particular function that you need, that's something that could be accelerated with AI. Or if you're a lawyer and you need to find pieces of case literature for your current case, that's a task that could really be enhanced with AI. And so at Cognistx, we really believe in artificial intelligence being able to kind of augment everyone's workflow. So really from any industry, anytime you're trying to find some piece of information online, and especially when you're looking for something that's more complicated than just a Control F, you're looking for actual ideas and topics that might not be represented in just a couple words or a phrase. Artificial intelligence is really good at those types of things, and we think that it can save most people quite a few hours every week, or maybe even every day, depending on their job, by using tools like Square.
That's really great. And so, Sanjay, before we end, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think Justin covered it very well. Another point of contact for Square is Jag. Let me give you people Jag's email as well. It's JAGRITI@cognistx.com. That's COGNISTX.com. She is awesome as well. She's one of the senior product managers for Square. So between Jag and Justin, everybody will be in great hands to learn more about Square. And I would just re-emphasize think about the use cases, think how you want to use the tools, and we can definitely help configure and bring the best of both worlds to your use case.
Right. And if there's someone listening who has lots of questions about generative AI or ChatGPT and how to use it and what the difference is with the work that Cognistx is doing and how Cognistx is using it, by all means, you can reach out to Justin or Jag or Sanjay at Cognistx.com, and you can ask, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding of the information and not really understanding how it applies to specific businesses. And Justin, you gave that really great example of the attorney. It actually made big headlines. His big faux pas, which may put a halt on the use of AI in the legal industry, at least for a couple of months. I think a lot of people are wary because of situations like that one. And I think if there's a resource out there like Cognistx where people can ask questions and get the answers that they need, it really will help stem the misunderstanding that exists. At least we hope it will.
Yeah. I think a lot of people kind of use extractive and generative AI as just one algorithm, one kind of magical black box model that's out there that you just type things in and you get things back out. But there's a lot of different types of machine learning models, and they do different things, and they're good for different domains. And so especially in the legal domain, using something like extractive AI, where you're able to actually look through at which pieces of information the AI has processed and how it came to that conclusion, is really, really important.
Right, right. And I think doing the research and asking the questions really helps understand how to use AI for your particular type of business. So I want to thank you both for joining us today at AI Driven. And again, just to remind the listeners, visit Cognistx.com. You can look at the work that we've done. Specifically, visit the Square, information about the Square product that we've been talking about today. And you can also reach out to Justin at Cognistx.com, Sanjay at Cognistx.com, or Jagrivi at Cognistx.com, and they can help you out as well. So thank you both, and we'll be back once more with AI Driven in a couple weeks. Take care, guys. Have a great summer.
Thank you, Patty.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks for listening in. Learn more about how AI drives what we do at Cognistx.com.